We're good to go whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Council. I see that we have quorum for today's meeting. Call it into session, a regular council meeting from May 29th, 2024. We ask all those that can, please do stand for the national anthem. Thank you. We will now have Councillor Wink read the land.
To take into account municipal growth trends.
There you go.
Yeah. Is that okay? To take into account geographic and topographic boundaries, to be mindful of existing communities of interest, and to pay attention to equal representation and voter parity. We were asked to develop a ward structure or council governance structure that could accommodate growth and population shifts for a minimum of 3 municipal elections and beyond if feasible. So 2026, 2030, and 2034. Our work began in the fall of 2023. We started with data collection and research. The data collection concerned the governance structures and other comparably sized municipalities in Ontario, particularly at the lower tier level. But we also looked at municipalities outside of Ontario where we thought the circumstances warranted comparison. We also undertook an analysis of existing case research. This primarily concerned cases that have come before LPAT and the Ontario Land Tribunal and OMB concerning municipal electoral boundaries and council structures. And we did preliminary analysis in the fall of 2023, which involved our population projections, where we developed population growth models that took into account planned housing developments in Pelham, and spatially mapped them onto the municipality, and then began to develop ward models that we thought were defensible or suitable for Pelham Council. The preliminary report itself was presented to you on February 7th, 2024. In that report, we presented 5 different ward models for your consideration and for the public's review. 2 of those ward models involved a 3-ward structure with 2 councillors per ward, and the other 3 involved single-member ward models, where we presented a 4-ward model, a 5-ward model, and a 6-ward model. Following the presentation of our preliminary report, we conducted interviews with yourselves and with your senior staff. We held 2 public meetings, and we conducted a survey that was delivered online and in person at our public meetings. The result of that process is the final report, which you see in front of you today. Going through our recommendations, the first concerns the role of the selection of the deputy mayor. In the course of our interviews and during our public meetings and in our online survey and the survey results, there was very little support for the introduction of a directly elected deputy mayor, with the important exception that there was support for it in the event that Pelham was given 2 seats the Pelham Town Council was given 2 seats on Niagara Regional Council, and I'll save that discussion for the end of this presentation. We saw no reason to change the existing structure that you have in place, whereby the deputy mayor is appointed to a 2-year term following the municipal election and is then turned in the middle of that period. On the second, ward versus at large, there was very little support in any of our interviews or consultations for changing from the existing ward structure to an at-large structure. We recommend that all councillors in Pelham continue to be elected from wards. Lastly, on council size, I would say the modal response or the general view was that the current size of Pelham Council is quite appropriate and should remain at 7 members. That was certainly true from our in-person interviews and in our public meetings. There was some support in our online survey for reducing the size of council, which isn't surprising. That seems to be kind of a prominent view publicly at times, that council should be reduced as much as possible. But generally, I would say the modal response was that the current size is quite appropriate and should remain at 7 members, and we concur. Our recommendations. Our first recommendation is to adopt the ward boundaries contained in our option 2, the revised 3-ward model that we presented in our preliminary report. The general consensus from our in-person interviews, our discussions with you and your senior staff, and in our public meetings was that the existing 3-ward model worked pretty well. The public seemed to like 2 councillors per ward. We saw no reason to deviate from that. There was support for leaving in place the existing 3-ward model and the current boundaries. When presented with the revised 3-ward model, I think there was general support that the revised 3-ward model improved equitability, both now and particularly in the future, by adding population to Ward 1 and moving the eastern boundary of Ward 1 to Effingham Street. Effingham Street serves as a boundary, we were told, for public school busing systems, and so there was a sense in which it already formed kind of a natural boundary in the community, and it didn't seem to unnecessarily divide any existing communities of interest more than would be deemed acceptable by sort of general standards. So our recommendation is to adopt the revised 3-ward model. It's a small change from the system that's in place now. The general view was that the system that's in place now works really well. There wasn't much support for dramatically changing it. The revised 3-ward model simply improves it and makes it a little fairer for voters and residents in your municipality. And there's the map of the revised 3-ward model there, which you'll have a copy of in the report in front of you. And then here are the population projections contained for the revised 3-ward model. As you can see, we're within basically sort of 10% of average ward population all the way to 2034. So that ward structure, the revised 3-ward model, can accommodate future population growth and population shifts quite well and wouldn't require revision or another ward boundary review for several years. Now, on to our conditional recommendations. As I mentioned at the beginning, there was discussion throughout our review process about the possibility of Niagara Regional Council being restructured in some way and what that would mean for the governance structures here in Pelham. the general view seemed to be that if Pelham was granted an additional seat on Niagara Regional Council, then that would provide a basis for having a directly elected deputy mayor who would then serve in that position along with the mayor. Our recommendation is that in the event the council obtains a second
Yeah, I
representative.
think I'm in now. Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, thanks. Okay, bye.
And that would be Professor Sank.
That's Andy. So we recommend, if for some reason the province does restructure Niagara Regional Council and does away with directly elected regional councillors, in that sort of contingent future possibility, we recommend a new council configuration consisting of a directly elected deputy mayor and a directly elected mayor who would serve as your representatives on the region, and 5 ward councillors, with 1 being elected from each of the 5 wards described in our option 4. And so option 4 was developed for exactly this eventuality. It maintains the current council size, which most people seem to think work quite well. It does depart from the current 2 councillor per ward model, but it does provide a system which, in the case of wards 4 and wards 5, might provide ward boundaries that better encapsulate some of the communities of new residents to Pelham. If Niagara Regional Council was restructured in such a way that regional councillors, directly elected regional councillors, were abolished and Pelham was given 2 indirectly elected representatives on Niagara Regional Council, but council strongly wishes to maintain the 3-ward system, the second option would be to continue, there's a 5-ward model, would be to adopt our revised 3-ward model, electing only 1 councillor for each of those 3 wards, with a directly elected deputy mayor and mayor, giving you a council size of 5 members and 2 that would serve on Niagara Regional Council. Unless Andy has anything to add at this point?
I had trouble, can you hear me?
Yes.
I had trouble getting into the meeting, but Sarah helped me out with the passcode. Sorry to be late joining you, but I don't have anything to add because I didn't hear the beginning of Tim anyway, so sorry about that.
You've heard me a lot before, so. We're happy to take any questions you might have about the report or about the process leading up to the report.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation. I think it was an exercise that, even though the results more or less stayed the same, it was a great exercise to go through, listen to feedback from the community, and of course, in this day and age of the amalgamation or decentralization of the region, we always have to conclude that in the stargazing. So I'm glad that you indeed took a look at, if this happens, you might want to do that. So thank you for looking at that aspect. Yeah, other than that, my own thoughts is I like the final recommendations, staying with the 3. We are slated to grow, continuing to grow at a, some say, a rapid pace for the next 20 years, and perhaps halfway to that goal, we may have to indeed take another look, and maybe then would be the time for a re-amalgamation or realignment of the ward system. I personally like the recommendation of moving Ward 1 east to Effingham Street, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I'll open questions up to council. And, oh, there we go, Councilor Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just at the end on page 12 where it says, if Pelham Municipal Council is determined to keep the 3 existing wards. And it says, while introducing a directly elected deputy mayor. And you recommend that we drop from 7 to 5 with 1 counselor elected from each ward. But if we've only got 3 wards, can you explain that? I'm just not grasping that. I don't know how we get to 5 counselors if we, 1 from each ward and we only have 3 wards.
Sure. Through you, your worship. The 5th counselor would be a directly elected deputy mayor.
Yeah, but it says keep the 3. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. The 5th counselor would be a directly elected deputy mayor.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Any other questions? Not seeing any. You explained everything fully in your report. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and I'll turn to the clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do have a motion for council's consideration moved by Councillor Curran, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that council receive the presentation and the final report on the 2024 ward boundary council composition update and selection process for deputy mayor from Dr. Andrew Sankton and Dr. Tim Coben for information, and that the town of Pelham's deputy mayor continues to be elected by members of council for a 2-year term, with the term starting immediately after the municipal election and halfway through each 4-year term thereafter. And that all 6 councillors in the town of Pelham continue to be elected from 3 wards, 2 councillors from each of the 3 revised wards, and that Pelham Town Council maintain its current size of 7 members, and that the ward boundaries contained in option 2 of the final report revised 3-ward boundary model be adopted as the new ward boundaries for the town of Pelham effective for the 2026 municipal election. To you for discussion and vote.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that now moves us to our consent agenda, I believe. Request to lift any consent agenda items. This would be the opportunity if council wanted separate debate and vote.
Is there any consent agenda
Oh,
item?
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wink. I did miss the adoption of our previous minutes.
Okay.
So I have a motion moved by Councillor Eckhart and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed and read. C-092024, regular council meeting, May 15th, 2024.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Nesnick?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Just a little correction to the minutes. It was not when I mentioned congratulations to the quilt and the art festival, it wasn't the upcoming art festival, it was the art festival that had happened the weekend prior. So if that could be corrected, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Changes will be noted. Any other omissions or additions? Not seeing any. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
So now we'll move to item number 8. So if council members have any items on the consent agenda that they wish to lift for separate debate and vote, now would be the time to identify it.
Is there any councillor that would like to lift any of the consent agendas for separate discussion? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do have a resolution moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Deputy Mayor Wink. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the May 29th, 2024 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved. So moving now, perhaps we could deal with all the items, the 3 items listed under staff reports. So 911, 912, 9113.
Any councillor have questions, comments? And I see Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just want to comment on the overnight parking of the transit vans at the MCC. We have 11 vans parked there, I believe now, and we're at the cost of $70 a month for each one of them. But this is part of the direction that we're trying to take at the NRT to disperse the vehicles so that they're available early in the morning and late at night for people to use the van. So I'll be bringing a report to council on probably the next meeting about the developments at the NRT, which are important for the on-demand parking. You're not just the on-demand parking, but the on-demand service, and for the specialized services for people who are handicapped and unable to, disabled and unable to use the regular transit. We now have another service. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. On that overnight parking, I thought that it was great that staff got involved in negotiations. They were going to go to St. Catharines, then we got negotiating with them, and we ended up with them back at the MCC. And I think that's great, because at the beginning of the day, they start here in Pelham and go outward. So any comments from the Director of Recreation on this item?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we were pretty excited to be able to have the vans parked overnight in the overflow parking. It seems to be working well, and as you said, it's a closer start, so perhaps a better service. And it is very limited timing, as we know, because there's a new service that's going to be starting, I believe, in July, but Councillor Olson can update us at that time.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions on 9.1, 9.12, and 9.13? Councillor Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. I'm not sure who it's directed to, maybe Ms. Van Ravensway, but the revenue generated from this, does this appear then at revenue generated by the MCC, or is it general town coffers?
Vicky,
Through you,
wanna
Mr.
try
Mayor, I am going to refer this over to
that? To the
Mr.
Deputy
Usama.
Treasurer. there.
Yeah, to Usama. Yeah, we arrange everything and they take care of the money.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be part of the MCC overall revenues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor. If I see no other councillors with a question, I have one for 9.13. I've already informed the Public Works Director I was going to ask this question. I noticed that the bridge on Cream Street, it had an initial budget of $750,000, and you mentioned in our previous discussions that you had come back for an increase, and I was wondering if you could refresh our memory from 750,000 to just over $1 million. Could you go through that, please?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The original budget for the Cream Street Bridge replacement was $750,000. Staff tendered that project. The low bid came in at $993,762.60. Staff brought a report to council in June of 2023 requesting a budget increase of $331,616 for a total overall budget of $1,081,615. The total cost on the project for completion was $1,024,899, so $56,717 under the revised budget. The reason for budget increase from $750 to the $1,081,615 due to market increases at the time, excess soils regulations, just that's the way the market came in during the tendering process. So that's why the budget request was asked for additional funds to award the project and get it completed.
Okay, thank you. It is, I believe that bridge is actually, it's 3 big culverts that were installed. Is that right, sir?
Yes, that's correct. So we cover our bridges and major culverts under our bridge replacement program as part of our capital budget forecast. So yes, that's correct. It's called a bridge, but it's actually 3 large diameter culverts.
Thank you. Kind of scary that it wasn't too many years ago we did these projects for $350,000, $400,000, and now due to escalating costs that beyond our control, we're now up to $1 million. Wow. But Yeah, you did mention in one of your comments to me that it was one of the reasons is for the new regulations about off-site dirt removal. Is that, that does play a role in this also?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. So there are new excess soil regulations that are on all of our capital projects now would require any excavation material. So we undertake now extensive soil testing prior to the project being tendered to identify contaminated soils and where those soils can be disposed of. So this is a reflection of budget, previous budgets that have now been increased with costs that have come under new legislation. One thing I will comment on is that the town has invested fairly substantially in its bridge and major culverts over the last several years. Staff will be, we just completed our biannual inspections, which occur every second year. And so staff will be bringing a report to council on the status of that most recent inspection, and it's the overall condition and network is improving from previous years. So the investments are paying off, and we'll be bringing that report to council, I think, and then July. I think it's coming in July.
Excellent. Thank you for those remarks, Director. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. Could comment on 9.1.2, and that's the thank you correspondence from the Fenwick Lions Club with respect to a grant they received and the equipment they received in the kitchen. And I want to point out to council that this is the second grant that our community has received from Farm Credit. The first grant was for the Lions Club for $49,000 for a walk-in freezer that's yet to be installed, but it indicates that our relationship with the St. Catharines Office of Farm Credit is very good, and they're seeking to support our agricultural community and our rural community with these kind of grants, so it's much appreciated.
Thank you, sir, and I believe you made the mistake of attributing the walk-in freezer to the Lions, and it was indeed, I believe, to the Legion.
That's correct. That's correct, Mr. Mayor. That's what I intended to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on these three items? Not seeing any. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So then we could go to 9.2.1, just information correspondence from the Ministry of Natural Resources about their rabies vaccine program.
Okay. Any questions, comments on this program? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Then we could go to 9.3.1, the Audit Finance Committee recommendation letter.
Okay. Any comments on this letter brought forward by the Pelham Audit and Finance Committee? Councilor Olson, I believe you're on that committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm on that committee with Deputy Mayor Wink and Councilor Eckert. So, and we were all in attendance and we passed this motion. And I just wanted to point out to our residents that this is a good news story, another good news story coming from Finance and Audit because of the hard work of our staff, I'd have to say, because our net debt has declined. Our eliminated the short-term debt, which always appeared on our statement, and the goal was to eliminate it this year, and it's now paid off. And the change in our accumulated surplus last year was 7.5 million. This year it's 9.2. And all these changes are working towards a much more stable and financially tolerable situation for the town. And I believe that staff should be congratulated for their work, because this wouldn't happen without the effort of staff, and considering every payment and its indications that our cash flow takes a paramount importance to our staff and to this council. So I just wanted to point that out. I have no questions, Mr. Mayor, but that was my comment.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Olson. And I believe council will join with you in congratulating staff for finding efficiencies within the system to keep our expenses as low as possible. Any other comments on this? Not seeing any. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that wraps up with the items under the consent agenda. So there is a resolution before council if you're prepared to make a vote.
Yes. Okay, so I call the question to vote. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now moving to item 11, presentations and reports. So we have a member of council report. We have Councillor Kerr, an update on the Niagara Central Airport.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Being on the commission has been a learning experience for me, so I'm just trying to make sure that everybody's kind of brought up to speed as to where we've gotten to. At the last council meeting, I talked about three upcoming events that COPA was running, the Discover Aviation, and some other things that had happened as well. Councillor Eckert, I know, had attended the Air Cadet installation, which due to inclement weather, they had to relocate from the airport to the Valley Community Center in Port Colborne because of the thunderstorm. So it wouldn't look good to have the cadets out in a thunderstorm on the tarmac at the airport. So that was kind of a change. And I think Councillor Eckert had a good time at it. I'm sure he did. A couple of things in here. As all we're aware, there was an ombudsman review at the airport, and all of the recommendations have been undertaken. We have a formal recording secretary. Everything's done according to the Municipal Act. The publication of all of the agendas and the meetings and the minutes are available. So now they're posted online. The website is up and active and available. Similarly, all of the financial statements and audited materials are also posted on the website, so anyone can go to them to take a look through. The overall budget of the airport is not, when I think of the budget for the town of Pelham and I think of the budget for the airport, it's pretty, the budget of the airport doesn't match the Cream Street culvert replacement. So a single item at the town level is well beyond what the airport's at. We did have some challenges, and I think it was brought up as well here. This asset retirement management plan was kind of thrust upon the airport and not having had it done before. So they had to go through it. So that kind of delayed the release of the books and everything else to everyone. But that was completed through, actually through the assistance of the Township of Waynfleet that had gone through it and had some protocols that they could quickly adapt for it. So I admit them. What was of note is that the municipal subsidy expenses, in other words, the amount being charged to the communities, the four communities, which are Welland, Port Colborne, Waynfleet, and Pelham, have dropped from 56% in 2019 to 24% in 2024. That's a good thing. I mean, that means we're moving in the right direction to go to almost our hope at the commission is go to a point where we don't have to seek any funds from any of the communities to make the airport operative. And where that has kind of come into play is the hiring of a new facility operator. And I want to highlight that to you. Mr. John Roy has come to us. He has an extensive background with Rogers, actually in advertising and sales and everything else and promotion. And it was decided at the commission level that we weren't really needing a pilot to run the airport as much as somebody to oversee the airport, take care of the basics, but also look at promotion of the airport and its improvement into the future and making it more of a destination. The recent announcement of the Port Colborne EV situation, there is also expected anticipation of more flights coming in because it's close for people, for executives and others that may potentially come in. So this is kind of a win-win. The other one was that a hangar was constructed for 5 airplanes, and immediately, just because of the delays in construction like everyone goes through, but they're all fully rented and going out, and actually another waiting list has occurred. The amount of money that was secured in the loan to build that hangar actually came in well under budget. And there is an intention to look at, because of demand for additional hangar space, to look at a modified expansion of additional hangar space, but kind of following on the mayor's plan for the MCC, they want to make it solar ready. In other words, look at the potential for inclusion of the panels on it in the actual design, which I think is a very smart. So these are all preliminary discussions and investigations going on. I did want to include the last 2 parts are, one, it was a thank you, and the chief from the fire department. Pelham Fire Department came out and actually did a training session on use of the defibrillator that was purchased for use at the airport. So thank you from that end. That was a kudo to the town. And finally, it's quite interesting, and this would be, I think, of interest to Councillor Eckert. The RCMP and the Niagara Regional Police Services Video Unit want to get involved in putting on a training session about a video on crime doesn't fly here, and to be targeted at waterways and small airports to protect them. What was brought to light was that in many cases, it's quite surprising that middle of the night drop-offs of illegal goods and other things often occur more in the rural areas than they do in the more metropolitan areas. And to be honest, our airport is not a bad location because there's not a lot of houses, not a lot of people. Somebody can go in and touch and go and those kind of things. So they're going to use this as a training session for law enforcement personnel. The video that's produced is going to be strictly within the law enforcement. It's kind of like they don't want to tip off to somebody else what what they've learned. So I thought that was another positive. It's not been confirmed, but its potential is to be used across Ontario by the Ontario Police Video Training Alliance. So that's kind of where we are with the airport as we stand right now. I have another meeting. The monthly meeting again is tomorrow night. There's a few other things that we're going to discuss going forward, and I am grateful to submit this to you for your review.
Great, thank you for that update, Councillor. First, if I may turn to Councillor Eckert, will we be looking forward to achieving video stardom? Already a producer trying to get a hold of him.
That's right.
Yes.
I starred in 2 previous productions from the Ontario Video Alliance, and they got unfortunately, they got as many laughs as they did valuable training. So I doubt that I'll be asked to perform in this one. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments on the cadet afternoon?
It was wonderful. The last minute change, and actually they decided 10:30 Friday night that they didn't want to take a chance with the weather, which I appreciated, as did everyone else. The arena was full of family and friends, and the cadets put on a great show, some demonstrations, and I had the pleasure of attending with my youngest son, who's a petty officer in the first class in the Royal Canadian Navy, and he attended in dress whites, and he was quite an attraction as well. So he enjoyed it as well. He always enjoys that stuff, and he gave me a rolling commentary on everything that was going on. So, no, thank you, Councillor Kerr, for allowing me to attend in your place, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for those comments, Councillor Eckert. Any other questions for the councillor on his airport report? Not seeing any. Again, councillor, thank you very much for that. We appreciate the updates. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand and seconded by Councillor Nistic. Be it resolved, the council received the report from Councillor Kerr regarding an update on the Niagara Central Airport Commission for information.
Okay, thank you. Once again, any further comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I now have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Wink and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following items: personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and labor relations or employee negotiations, one item.
Okay, thank you. Oh, so,
For discussion.
oh, I'm sorry. Any discussion on moving into in-camera? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just give us a minute. We'll stop the stream. We'll clear the chamber. I'm waiting for the live stream. We're good to go, Mr. Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Welcome everyone back into the chamber. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that council now reconvene the meeting.
Oh,
We do need to vote on that.
All those in favor? And none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you. So I have a motion moved now by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that council, oh, sorry. Yes, we're moving to staff reports. Yes, so we're moving to staff reports. So the first one, 14.1.1. Be it resolved that council received the report 2024-0133, status of cannabis zoning bylaw amendment, and that council directs staff to initiate a technical process to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw to incorporate the cannabis zoning provisions and bring it into alignment with the official plan. To you for
you.
discussion.
Yep, open for discussion. Myself, go ahead, Councilor, I'll say my comments for next.
Yes, so just in the report, it just says that once you get the, initiate the technical process, I'm just wondering if that usually requires a public meeting, so I just wondered if we have a date planned for that public meeting. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess to the CEO.
Mr. CAO?
Yes, thank you for the question. Assuming that the basic proposition is acceptable into council, we believe it's possible to manage a public meeting on Wednesday, June 26th in the Accuracy Room of the MCC. And so that would be our target.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to suggest at this time, and I haven't discussed this with other members of council, that perhaps for this exercise, we go to an outside planning consultant to do the work for us for various reasons, which I will remain, just, I think, for transparency and perhaps our planning department, this has sort of come up suddenly, to make sure that they don't have to take on additional workload at this time. So I would like to put a motion forward. In order to discuss it, I need a seconder. If council wishes to go that way, is there a seconder for that? Council Olson, you will second. So now we will have a discussion on that. Any other discussions, ideas about that, about the motion? Deputy Mayor Wink.
So just a question, if we use an external planner or consultant on this, would that delay the process of having the public meeting on?
I will turn to the CAO.
Well, that's distinctly possible. So the town's purchasing bylaw, there are some exceptions for on emergent basis and for relatively small transactions. And then furthermore, you've delegated adequate authority to me in certain instances to spend up to, I think I'm at 50,000 right now. Obviously, I don't use that authority very often. In any event, so for that purpose, and we're at the will of council to do so. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud here. I would imagine we would approach the firm that provided the work about 3 years ago and supported the Cannabis Control Committee in coming up with recommendations to council. So now I'm making some assumptions about I have no basis to say that anyone will be available from that firm and to meet the timelines. I am, that being said, this is unplanned work, and the planning department is not operating at full capacity, at full strength. It's not fully staffed at the moment. So certainly there'd be some reason to use external planners. It is unplanned and we're shorthanded. Conversely, town staff have all of the, in fact, Ms. LaRock, who's present, has been involved in this file for she predates my employment in being involved in this file, 5 years solid. I don't know what the total duration was for her, but at least 5 years, and is highly conversant. And we're actually talking about something very straightforward here, since we've already gone through the process once. So I realize I've just made arguments for and against, but I think that's maybe the role of a good CAO. There are some reasons to consider doing that. I don't know if I could guarantee that would work in the time. I think if they wouldn't, then I'd have to look somewhere else for a different planner, is I suppose my answer. I think time is of the essence. Wisdom of Solomon, back to you, council.
Okay.
Spoken like a true lawyer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question, Councilor Wing. Councilor Nesnick?
Yes, so when I read this report, it was just, my understanding was that it was just a technical process, that we already have all the information needed, but because it's a change to the comprehensive zoning bylaw, there does have to be the same process that goes through that whenever an amendment to that is made. But maybe this is through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Sturton, do we not already have all the information required in order to do this process?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question. I think the substance of the work is done. It's what we want to bring forward into the comprehensive zoning bylaw through this technical amendment process. So, as I say, the substantive pieces is complete.
Thank you. Councilor?
Well, so therefore, in my opinion, I don't think we need to bring in outside counsel or outside planning folks for that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Olson, you voted, you were indeed the seconder. Any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if there might be a third course even, and perhaps it's, if we have the work all completed and we have the documentation, perhaps we could, at one time we were talking about the fact that we were looking at the changes in the documents, and if we could record the changes so that perhaps that would satisfy some obvious questions about transparency and things. If we just document the plan, and then we're able to show what the changes are to outside parties, perhaps that would be sufficient. If we do something like that, if I could ask the CAO about that.
Mr. CAO, comments on the new technology?
Am I not? Hello, yes. So I think we'd be pleased to demonstrate our work. I taking some liberties to speak on behalf of Ms. LaRocque et al., but having worked with her for 5 years, I know she knows how to use track changes. I have experienced this. What I think Councillor Olson is alluding to is the capacity to set up a document so that you can show where changes have occurred, and it makes it quite visual and quite obvious. So we have a zoning bylaw that is 99% functional, and we're just looking around that other 1% to sort of perfect it. And I think that would be an easy way for us to demonstrate the work that's done very quickly and to show where it's concentrated. And I think that would add some value. And so I think that's, if I'm interpreting Councillor Olson correctly, I think that's actually an excellent idea. So we could show, now I'm talking about a final report that comes after a public meeting, and who knows what submissions are made there, but in essence, that's a great way to encapsulate the changes into an already existing document. We can show what the final outcome is and then what the proposed changes are in blazing red. So I think that's viable. I don't know if that addresses whatever transparency concerns exist vis-a-vis the planning function, but I think I would say we have the skill, capacity, knowledge on our planning team. The bench strength's pretty good here in Pelham. so that if we show the finished product with some track changes, you can see what happened, you can see what went in, what's come out, and it will, we're talking about something really defined, narrow, and specific. It's not document-wide. Like I will use the 99 and 1% analogy. I don't know if it's literally 1%, but it'll be like that. So I think that could work quite well, and that might split the difference. The benefit is it gives us control over work timing. My only anxiety with going outside for planning is that we get 100% of, in this case, Ms. LaRocque's attention when, because we're her only client and employer, and when you go to the private sector, we are a minnow. We feel that with accounting firms, law firms, et cetera, right? So there is that, but certainly this is unplanned work, and I'm sure it won't be entirely unwelcome if it's done by the private sector. So there I am, talking both sides of my mouth again, but I do think the track changes thing could help.
Thank you. Councilor Olson, you still have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, so if we're 99% done, we can incorporate the work that's already been done by many people and many pieces of advice we have. And I'm happy to see that we would be able to demonstrate transparency in this, including at our annual meetings. Sorry, what's happening to me?
I apologize.
Okay, I was just about to tell the mayor I wasn't going to vote in favor of the motion. I just put it on the table, so I want to make sure that got out there. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kerr.
Yes, I won't be voting in favor of the motion. Instinctively, going back, realizing that what we're functionally looking at is materials that were heavily investigated. The writing was done. The verbiage was done. The verbiage was accepted previously, and an external hit was the person that had been involved in that. The idea is that everyone needs to see what was a deficiency and what is being added to this through a technical process. Having the comparative and having reviewed dissertations and other things where the infamous track changes is always in the best interest of everyone, so you can see everything. I think that the fact that it's a singular item, and by requiring track changes, then it's easily identified to the public at large that nothing else is being modified, despite some concerns maybe of some people of what else is being done. And if the language is the same, I don't have a problem of following Councillor Olson's suggestion that we do a direct staff for a track changes. That being made available to the public as well at the public meeting to show them at the discussion at that point. So I won't support your motion for going external because I think it's going to cause an undue delay in the process.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Again, we're still discussing the motion. Any further comments? To Deputy Mayor Wink.
So I'd like to echo Councillor Kerr's comments that I will not be supporting the motion. This needs to be put to the public as soon as possible. There's a gap in the functionality of this bylaw that it needs to be moved forward quickly in whatever we can do. And I like the idea of showing what was approved previously and what we're promoting or what we're going to approve now. And with just a few track changes is the way to go. So I don't see the need of spending extra money to an outside consultant to do this. We've spent enough money on consultants and on this file, and it's something that we're quite capable of doing. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to this suggestion, I agree with my fellow councilors, Councilor Olson, Kerr, and Wink. I will not be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Well, before I call the vote, I would just like to state a few comments. Number one, I have complete faith in our planning department. Saying that, I also realize that in the thick of the cannabis wars that were fought mostly by the previous council, that we did indeed use an outside planner to allay some fears that from members of the community, whether they were real fears, whether they were justified or not, is indeed a bone of contention. But my idea of bringing this motion to council was that I realized that what we know, the information we have, that this is a routine correction, as it were. And I am very happy to see that we do have technology now that will track for everyone to see what we have in place and what we're going to replace it with are going to be 99.9% identical. It's a procedural process that we're going through. But even though it looks like the motion will go down in flames, I consider that I will not withdraw the motion, and unless anyone has any further comments, I will call the vote. Councilor Kerr.
Yes, and just kind of follow up, and I understand the need for external planners the previous time through, because this was totally new territory for any community in all of Ontario. My rationale for voting against going external is that this is not new territory. We are treading down the same path and not doing anything dramatically different. So that's part of my reason. I fully supported external at that point, but at this point now, we're just paying to have, it's almost like paying somebody to tell you what time it is and you hand them your watch.
And what time is it, sir? Okay. I appreciate that. If there's no further comments, I'll call the vote. All the vote in favor of the motion? Obviously, I will. And all those against the motion? I know how you feel now, Councilor, it's 6-1. Yes. So yes, the motion is defeated. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we return now to the main motion that was moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Kerr. So that is now open for discussion, debate, and vote.
Okay, and Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That only leaves one question in my mind. It's to close the loop with regards to the outside counsel. I know we've gone over this many times, but it's been 2 years and we haven't finalized this process. And I understand the urgency of getting it done, but to me, the one outstanding thing is that the outside external counsel has not been heard by this council on this issue with where we are today. And for me, that's an important step that, if I would be proposing, and I'm not saying I'm going to do it, because I understand once we go to a deferral motion, then there's no more debate or discussion. But my personal opinion is I think we should defer it until we hear from external counsel, this council, with regards to why we're in the position we're in. Thank you.
Okay, so you haven't brought that motion forward, so we'll discuss that.
This is just a discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the discussion on a possible motion to defer is now on the table. Any councilors have comments for or against? Councilor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would not be in favor of a deferral. People have waited long enough for a resolution of this matter. And I think if we've got our bylaw at 99% and we have a capable staff here to do it, and a mechanism to be transparent with the community, I think a deferral would just be delay something that we want to get finished. It's been, this is going to have, it's going to have its 4th birthday, I guess, pretty soon. So, I'd like to see it done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Councilor Eckert.
Yes, with due respect to Councillor Hildebrand, I won't be in favor of any kind of a deferral at all. I don't know what more information we would be getting from outside counsel that we don't already have. And I'm not satisfied that we would get any kind of a response as quick as we would like. And so we're being held hostage by that instead of moving ahead. So I wouldn't be in favor of a deferral.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Nesnick?
Yes, so just through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question for either Ms. Sturton or Mr. Cribbs. Have you already had any consultation with the outside counsel that was on this file?
Mr. Cribbs?
On Monday, May 13th at 9 a.m., we had a Teams call, which is Town Solicitor, Ms. Sturton, myself, Town Clerk, Mr. Tigert, a member of the Planning Department, and our external counsel of record. And that's when, in my mind, a problem crystallized. And based on that, I wrote council 2 reports, one of which is before you today, the other of which was before you on Monday. So I actually consider external counsel to have participated in the writing of this report. That's the words. I've signed both reports because that's our process. When multiple people are involved, the ranking employee signs them, and that's me in this instance. But that call is what led to us be here today. So yes, they have been, we have communicated with them, and we have their thoughts here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. Back to you, Councilor.
Yes, so thank you. So yes, I too would then not be in favor of deferral. I think we have the information we need to move forward with this file.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other councilor, or, any other comment? Go ahead, Councilor Kerr.
Yes, I just to echo the comments of other councilors. I think we move forward. We've had our staff council support the reports that have come to us, and from my understanding of legal standings, et cetera, we have the information in front of us that's put in front of it is truthful. And I think, again, any delay is unwarranted at this point.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Deputy Mayor Wink.
So I will side with the other councilors in not supporting a deferral. I think we do have the information. The deferral won't provide us any more information, but will add more costs to the corporation. So I will not be voting for the deferral.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Hildebrand, do you wish to move forward with that motion, or?
I will not proceed forward on that motion because I understand how Councilor Olson and you have just felt after you go to a six to
It
one
hurts,
vote.
yes, it hurts, yes.
It hurts. But I still think I will not be voting in favor of the motion that we're going to go forward with at this present time. Because
Okay.
for me, I needed that final meeting.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Councilor. Mr. Clerk, can you please read the motion again?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Be happy to. Be it resolved that council will receive the report 2024-0133 status of cannabis zoning bylaw, and that council direct staff to initiate a technical process to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw to incorporate the cannabis zoning provisions and bring it into alignment with the official plan.
Okay, excellent. Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be asking for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any other comments before I call for the vote? Oh, before the clerk will call for the vote if it's recorded. Councilor Kerr.
So the direction to staff of how to prepare the documents for review, et cetera, will be, is that a direction or is that part of this?
Mr. CAO.
I actually think it's a really, really good suggestion, so I guarantee that's what we'll be doing. You can feel free to amend or just we will do it either way.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Counselor. And without seeing any further comments, I will ask the clerk to conduct the recorded vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Starting with the recorded vote, Councillor Hildebrand.
No.
Councillor Kerr. Yes. Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion is carried 6-1.
Okay, thank you. To you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving now, I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2024-0127, new legislative requirements in the Public Works Department for information, and that Council approve the creation of one environmental compliance analyst position with a target goal of starting this position in July 2024.
Thank you. Perhaps we will turn to the CEO for a little more enlightenment on this position.
You know, Jason Mara actually has a beautiful voice. And he waxes philosophical like no one else. And I feel like I'm a monotone. So I think I'd like to pass the buck, if I may.
Yes,
And
indeed.
I may.
We will turn to the Director of Public Works, Mr. Marr.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Recently, the MECP, the Ministry of Environment, Culture and Parks, has implemented new legislation for municipalities that basically puts the responsibility and onus onto the lower tier municipalities to manage the water, not only the water, but the wastewater and storm sewer services that we provide to the town, very similar to what the drinking water quality management system is for the town and what the Safe Water Drinking Act brings. So the legislation basically puts the onus onto the town for receiving applications, doing all of the approvals for new sanitary and new stormwater facilities and connections to our network. And it's an administrative function that's going to be now the responsibility of the town to undertake, which will be audited by the ministry. Very similar to how the drinking water quality management system operates. It's a phased-in approach. We're working with other municipalities as well as the ministry to download the responsibility. With that comes a number of standard operating procedures that the town will need to develop with respect to stormwater and sanitary sewer works, which will lay out maintenance responsibilities, obviously the approvals for new infrastructure coming in, and making sure that those systems and networks are upkept to high standards and service levels. There will be annual reporting that needs to be done, again, very similar to our drinking water quality management system, to the ministry, and that work will be audited by the ministry. And in itself, moving to that type of requirement for the town requires extensive amount of resources. As you know, currently, our drinking water quality management program is managed by a third-party consultant, the administrative part of it. So the intent with this new position is that we bring that in-house, and that was one of the recommendations made through one of our audits, that we have an external third party doing administrative work. That firm was also completing our internal auditing process, and there was an opportunity for improvement there. So this position will obviously look after the legislative requirements and all the approvals for our stormwater and sanitary sewer systems, which were never before required. When we had applications in the past, those applications would pass through to the ministry for very complex projects directly, or would go through the region of Niagara for in the transfer of review program. So they would give approvals for smaller scale, lower risk type projects. now that all comes on to the municipality itself. So this position will not only manage the administrative part of our stormwater and our sanitary sewer, but we would bring in in-house the management and the administration of our drinking water quality management system. Currently, the town, again, we third-party that out to a consultant, but other municipalities within Niagara, most of them have this position already established in-house, and working with the working group through Niagara who's dealing with the new legislation requirements for the ECA and CLI, they are looking at bringing in additional resources to their departments as well to manage this, these components. So that's the reason the engineering department is making the ask for this position. There was reports brought last year when we were getting our feet wet with the new legislation, how this would impact our department. Now that we've got the draft approvals for the CLI ECA programs for the sanitary and storm, we understand the administrative work that's required to undertake these, and this is what this new position would help us with at the town.
Excellent. Thank you for that detailed explanation. Before I open it to council, one question. Do you see down the road that they're going to be testing the water that's going to be leaving the stormwater management pond? Is that the ultimate goal? Do you see that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have my manager of engineering on the call, and Derek, he can make mention as to what types of sampling and testing will be done. I know there's going to be a number of requirements that we'll have to meet legislatively. Those will all be outlined in our operations manuals and maintenance plans. So Derek, maybe you can comment a little bit more specifically on that.
Mr. Young, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, one of the requirements of the stormwater management CLI ECA application is that we will be monitoring the outlets of all our storm outfalls. So whether that goes to a stormwater management pond, or whether that goes to a ditch, or if it goes to a municipal drain, the requirement is that we have to monitor them, and we also have to sign them so that the public knows where the outlet for their storm is. That is one of the requirements as part of the CLI ECA application.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, we'll now open it to any questions from council. Council Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Mr. Young. Does that monitoring include the water quality and solids and temperature, or what does it include?
Mr. Young?
Through Mr. Mayor, currently it's not been defined by the MECP. They've just asked for a monitoring plan. We're currently in the draft stage of our applications, which we have until the end of next year to come up with our own level of service that we would like to provide for our storm outlets. Once we have the operation and maintenance manuals in place, we can then better establish a level of service that we'd like to provide to those storm outlets.
Councillor?
Yes, thank you for that. One of the key things with the 12 Mile Creek and the Race Road facility there is the temperature of the water that's going through there. So I'm hopeful that that would be something that would be considered for that as well. And then the road solids that we're picking up off the drainage from the streets as well. And I had one other one, but I forgot what it was, Mr. Mayor, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Curry?
Yes, and it's more of a general technical question. Are they going to be able to identify from a stormwater pond that's actually an active water source, it's not strictly stormwater entering it, to be able to identify the water quality? Case in point that I'd like to bring up is the Cherry Ridge stormwater pond is actually active groundwater filled. It is not strictly sourced from stormwater. So this creates another havoc, and my comment for that comes to the fact that when they were doing the mosquito abatement program, they were not allowed to treat the Cherry Ridge stormwater pond because it was an active flowing water source all year round. So you have, to me, that leads to potential challenges of identifying if there is a issue with something in there. Is it actually from the stormwater, or is it from the groundwater that's been percolating up for the last, well, way longer than I'm alive.
Any comments on that, Mr. Young?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no. The Cherry Ridge Storm Pond predates my position here. My understanding of the Cherry Ridge Storm Pond, it was more of just a control pond rather than a swim pond. So it was an outlet for the existing development to discharge their stormwater to dissipate the rate of discharge and allow a trickle flow out the other side underneath Maple Street towards the municipal drain.
Okay, thank you for those words. We have Director of Public Works, Mr. Marr.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, I mean, that'll be one of the important roles of this position is to, we have individual ECA compliance approvals for our stormwater management ponds, specifically in dealing with the Rice Road Highway 20 stormwater management pond. Part of that ECA approval was to do annual monitoring, which hasn't been ongoing since the pond has been in operation. So we do monitor water quality and temperature annually, 3 times a year from that pond. And based on what the approval, the compliance approval stated for a particular pond would dictate what type of sampling and testing and monitoring is to be done. And that'll be part of this position, as well as to develop and work with our consultant on developing our operations and maintenance manuals, which will tie in what the requirements for each individual pond are that we currently have, and then going forward, what those requirements and sampling and monitoring will be for those future facilities.
Excellent. Thank you for that additional information. Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to ask an engineering question this time. I'm going to ask a financial question that bothers me with all these things the government comes up with. In the report, it says this position will not require any tax levy dollars this year, but it doesn't say anything about next year and the following years. What bothers me with all these government requirements, and I'm not saying they're not good, I understand they're required, but here we have another issue where we're going to have to do some more reporting. Energy reporting is going to a yearly report. That's another function that someone has to prepare. The conservation demand management plan, obviously right now it's at the 5-year limit, but I can see that changing as well. And these are all tax levy dollars that have to support someone to do the work. And that's the part. And I'm wondering where and how municipalities are expected to cover all these extra costs without provincial and federal legislation covering the costs. Is there any news from any of the government agencies and from other regions as to how they're covering these costs or recovering them?
To the CAO.
So, look, financially, this is a bad news story. Won't pretend otherwise. It's a download. There are 2 different orders of government, one of which is the region of Niagara. Fortunately, we have a representative in this room who might take that up come budget time, because that is one less thing they'll be doing, and one more thing we'll be doing. However, there is a potential for new revenue for the municipality here because fundamentally developers need some of these services already, and they end up paying through their fees, and that just never came to the municipality. That would go onward to the region, or I think onward to the province. And so at least there will be a new revenue line to partially offset. The thing is, I mean, those words are chosen carefully. We have a plan so that this year there's no levy dollars needed, but next year, and while we will look to no longer have an external contract so as to subsidize, we are talking about something like $40,000 or $50,000 into next year's budget and into perpetuity for the Pelham taxpayer. So at the moment, we can smile and say no cost to taxpayer here in 2024, but that we'll have to, if you approve this, we will end up with another employee, and we will have to build that number into next year's budget. That will be an increase on the levy. There's no way around it.
Counselor?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those words. Thank you. Counselor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Young, is there any, I see LIDs are mentioned in the report here as well. Is there any possibility of writing those types of things into our process when it's due next year? Low-impact development, and I think that Derek is probably the expert on LIDs, and I'd like to hear what he has to say about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Mr. Young?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. LIDs are a bit of a unique item at the moment because the function they actually carry out is dissimilar to those of the swim ponds. We can include them in our documentation, but currently the MECP does not. They don't have any verbiage or compliance approval for LIDs.
Counselor? Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We've now been sitting for over an hour and a half. I was thinking perhaps we all have a biological break of 5 or 10 minutes, please.
We are back online, Mr. Mayor. We're good to go.
Okay, thank you. We're back live streaming, so I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Wink and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved the council receive report 2024-0135, Town of Pelham Speed Limit Review for information, and that council endorse staff's recommendation to maintain the speed limits on the town's road network in accordance with the current bylaw 89-2000 as amended. To you for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on this agenda item. Councillor Eckert.
Yes, shocking that I would have something to say. First of all, let me start with a question to engineering or Public Works. Does this preclude us in any way in the future of designated certain roads within the town reducing their speed limits?
To the director, Mr. Mark.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't believe it does. This is an information report. It's to provide council with the information for speeding limits on our roadways. It gives you an idea of our classification of roads and how we got to where we are. Currently, in the urban areas, it's 50 kilometers per hour. In all rural areas, it's 60 kilometers per hour, with the exception of some rural roads due to geometrics that they've been reduced down to 50 as well. There are some areas where there's been some community safety zones established, particularly around schools, where there is a 40 kilometer per hour speed reduction. So I don't think this would limit council in any way in moving forward with any changes in the future. It's more of an information report now, and gives you an idea where we're at.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of things that I take exception to in this report. And I noticed that you cite a couple of other municipalities about that it's a limited effect on reducing drivers' habits of below the posted speed limit when they went to 40. One of the things it doesn't talk about, though, is the reduction in collisions. And I've read reports from the CAA and other municipalities in Ontario where it's reduced collisions up to 80% or more. And I think that's the whole idea of reducing speed limits, is to make the roads safer. It's not necessarily to enact speed cameras and traffic enforcement to nail people that are going to be going 45 instead of 55. But it is a proven fact, and in my entire adult life, we've all heard the expression that speed kills. When you reduce speed limits, it gives people more time to react to what's going on, to any situation, whether that's somebody darting out onto the street or a car coming through a stop sign and not stopping. You have more time to react. And personally, I left a meeting here not a couple of weeks ago where at 2 intersections, as I started to go, somebody blew right through the intersection. So we've all seen that stuff. And when you reduce speed limits, I think that statistics show that can help. Also, right near the end of the report, it said that the NRPS is in favor of implementing 40-kilometer neighborhood area speed limits. And that's because they know that it does reduce collisions. And that's where we're getting, pedestrians in crosswalks or pedestrians crossing the roads or cars coming out of side streets. The slower speeds gives people more time to react, and we get less collisions. And notice I don't call them accidents because they're not accidents, they're avoidable, so they're collisions. As I can support this, as long as there's an opportunity at some point in time, because I know the Pelham Active Transportation Committee is looking very seriously at making especially the downtown area of Font Hill, and I know we may be limited on Regional Road 20 or Highway 20, but especially downtown, we have limited areas for crosswalks, and we've spoken with Public Works about that, and we're restricted on where we can just put a crosswalk in for. But we're building more seniors buildings. We're encouraging walking and cycling, and this is something that we need to start doing now for future generations that are coming that'll get used to the fact that downtown Font Hill or the side streets off of Highway 20 or South Pelham are 40 kilometers per hour, and they're not as inviting to avoid the traffic light by ducking down Emmett or College or whatever and racing down to Station Street to then get out to Highway 20. So as long as there's an ability to designate certain streets rather than a blanket 40-kilometer speed limit in town, that we can designate certain streets, then I would vote in favor of this. But if we can't do that, then I would not be voting in favor of that. One in particular I'm thinking about is, you have 40 kilometers on South Pelham, you have 40 kilometers on Port Robinson, and then you increase it to 50 to come into town. And that to me is a perfect example of where we could have 40 kilometers all the way through to 20. And that takes us through the downtown area and slows everybody down and makes it better for walking. So that's my thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Turn to Mr. CAO.
I think possibly to offer some comfort to Councillor Eckhart and perhaps the community at large, there are two thoughts. One, I think council can view this report. You always have to worry about your rules on reconsideration, right? If you vote to do something or not do something, it's hard to undo it. You need someone to change their mind, then you need 2/3, right? But here I think you could certainly agree that this report is about the system as a whole. It's not about individual streets. And so I think you could make a decision here that still easily allows for future consideration of specific intersections or portions of roads, as Councillor Eckart's just referred to. So I don't think you're making it impossible to make additional changes down the road. I would submit that, and certainly council could simply agree now that would not be a reconsideration if you're looking at an individual street, like this is a report about the road system as a whole. And so there'd be that piece. And then secondly, staff are still tasked with coming back with another report about municipal speed enforcement and speed cameras, and that, of course, can take in community safety zones. So there's more conversation around speed to be had this calendar year. Plus, I think, unless council directs otherwise, staff would certainly take it that it would be entirely appropriate in the right fact circumstances to come back with reports about speeds in individual locations. But this is just a thematic as a whole. This report reflects the engineering department's vision and support for essentially the status quo, but that doesn't preclude the good work of the committee, the council Eckert chairs, and looking at individuals. So I think that's a entirely useful way forward, and you are getting more reports on speed this year.
Councillor?
Yes, thank you very much. And you brought up a good point about the community safety zones, because again, we have one on Port Robinson Road right by the school, but all of those kids going to that school walk up Port Robinson Road where it's 50. So why not extend that out to Rice Road? So the 40-kilometer zone and the community safety zone only goes to Station Street, as far as I know. And, you know, we could extend that out to Rice Road. Or when we have a community safety zone on South Pelham in front of Glen A. Green School, we could extend that right through into to Regional Road 20. You know, those are examples where I want to make sure that we have the ability to do that or look at that in the future. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you for those thoughts, Councillor Eckert. Any other comments? Councillor Kerr?
Yes, I endorse the report. The irony that I find is speed limits are all based around enforcement. And I think probably the number one complaint that we get from people is speeding within the town. So sometimes you can post things and until somebody gets the ticket in their hand. And let's just say after watching this morning's news and finding out about 3 of the speed cameras being cut down in West Lincoln, kind of highlights, and it looked very similar to the same cutting tool that was used on the one in Vineland, just right off, sizzled off, one in front of the school. So people get mad about some of the silliest things, but I think I agree. As long as we can look at specified roads and trying to make consistency, the worst thing in the world is to drive 50, then 40, then 50, then 40, then like, just give me something steady is easy for certain districts. And where there's high pedestrian traffic, yeah, you want to look at reduced speeds. I agree with you there. So this is, it follows the stuff. It's everything that I've been reading as well and following the other reports. It's just, I guess our dilemma is the enforcement side of things. We all get the regular emails of people shooting through crosswalks and rolling through stop signs. And I mean, Councillor Olson and I have just gotten recent emails from students at E.L. Crosley talking about the Effingham-Canberra Road intersection and among other things. So it all fits within it, but it's something we have to have in place.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you very much. So, yeah, I'm certainly going to endorse this report, and thank you for the time you've put and effort you've put into it with some of the background research. I still think that it is one of the largest complaints that we get as councillors with regards to speed and people, and it's not that they're speeding 50 kilometers an hour and people are complaining about it. I think people would be thrilled if people drove 50 kilometers an hour through town and down their streets, and especially through down past Port Robinson. I think that is the goal that we should be focusing on, and I really would like to figure out some way that our town can start a campaign with regards to this is your town, and your speed impacts your people. And like, this could be your grandchild crossing the road, and you need to be going the speed. And so just raising that awareness that stop means stop, all 4 wheels, and proceeding with, so if we can come up with a community campaign about, you know, did you go 50 kilometers today, or something with stickers and banners and posters and that sort of thing, I think it would be worthwhile for us as a town to promote something like that. So whether we can chat more a little bit about that in the future and bring a motion for that and put some budget dollars into that for next year's budget, I really think that would be a good way to raise awareness, to start to have everybody be responsible for driving the posted speed limits. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. On that item, you'll go into neighborhoods and you will see that individual residents have indeed put up signs, please slow down. And they will be, say that those signs have caught people's attention who have absent-mindedly crept their speed up and, oh yeah, take a look, right? So a simple thing like that can be helpful, and perhaps a town campaign overall might be something to look at. Although, Mr. CEO, is that something in the town's realm of responsibility? Or is that more or less a regional policing initiative, in your experience?
I find it's always less expensive and less painful to say it's the other party's responsibility.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments on this report? Not, oh, Councilor Eckert.
Yeah, sorry to keep going, but just to further comment on Councillor Niznik's. This problem is caused by residents of Pelham. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You know, to speed up Effingham and up Pancake to Haste, you're going home. You're not cutting through to Welland that way. You're going home to the subdivisions. And I always recall a story years ago. I was a sergeant sitting in Keith's restaurant in Welland, or in Fonthill, and the old guys at the counter that solved all the problems of the world every morning turned to me and said, when are you going to do anything about the speeding on Haste? And I said, next day shift, I'll have somebody there. But I'm going to warn you, it's going to be your friends and neighbors. And the guy that spoke to me was the first person to get a ticket. And the next time I saw him, he said, I didn't mean me. You know, so Councillor Niznik's absolutely right. This is your own people in Pelham, our own people in Pelham that are causing this issue. It's not people from Port Colborne or Welland or whatever. And maybe if certain street things happen, maybe some traffic will be relieved a little bit. But it is a town issue as far as I'm concerned, and I would support anything that we could do to, and I will be bringing it up at the PATC next meeting as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Not seeing any. I will call the vote. All those in favor? And none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That moves us now to 1414. I have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Deputy Mayor Wink. Be it resolved, the Council receive report 20240117, Conservation and Demand Management Plan for 2024 for information, and that Council approve the 2024 Conservation and Demand Management Plan.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on this report? Not seeing anyone. I will call the vote. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving to 1415, I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved that Council receive the report 20240109, the 2025 budget schedule for information, and that Council direct staff to include the budget open house public meeting to be conducted as part of the regularly scheduled meeting of Council on Wednesday, October 2nd, and that the rules of procedure as contained in the Town of Pelham procedural bylaw be suspended as they pertain to these delegations to allow unlimited delegations to register for and speak on the budget as part of this meeting, and that Council approve the 2025 budget schedule attached hereto, and that Council direct staff to include the approved budget schedule dates as part of Council's regular meeting schedule.
Thank you. After reviewing the budget schedule, did any of the meetings fall on anyone's birthday? Sorry, that was a joke. Tough crowd. Anyway, any comments on the schedule? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk. Oh, no, I call a vote. All those in favor of the schedule and any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving now to 14.1.6. I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2024-0130 MCC Lands Options and Public Consultations Results for information, and that Council direct staff to proceed with one of the options and report back on an implementation strategy for that option. To you for discussion and decision.
Excellent. Quite a response to the survey particularly. Any comments from members of council on the results of the survey and plans moving ahead? Deputy Mayor Wink.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put forth a motion to move into closed session to discuss potential sale price of lands.
Okay, is there a seconder on that? Okay, Councilor Nesnick. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you wanted, and if it's agreeable to the Deputy Mayor, we could add this to the list for the regularly scheduled closed session that's coming up. So we could just add that as another item and continue on with the open agenda item and then come back to this after we come out of closed, or we can go in and out and in and out.
To the Deputy Mayor?
So I think if we want to continue on with the existing motion, we should have all the information available to us to be able to make a fully detailed decision. So unfortunately, we have to go in and out and in and out.
Not a problem.
Okay. Let me have a seconder. Any other comments on this motion? On the motion to go in camera, all those in favor? I see none opposed. We will indeed go in camera. Do.
Okay, we're back live streaming, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. We are back live streaming. We're back in open session. So where are we, Mr. Clerk?
Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If we could just have a quick motion to resume the council meeting in open session?
Okay, all those in favor? Oh, I need a motion. Do I need a motion and second?
A mover and seconder,
Okay,
please.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Wink and Councillor Hildebrand, second. Thank you. All those in favor of that motion and none opposed, we are now back in open session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moving back to our agenda, I have not been notified of any new business by council members, so we move on to present.
Wait. At the indulgence of council, I would like to, we can either go unfinished business or new business. Which would you prefer?
That's your call, Mr. Mayor.
Let's go unfinished business. And I will have a,
No, we should be back.
so we're still going back.
Oh, I'm
sorry,
yes. You're right. We had a report in front of us. My apologies.
Okay, so we're back to 4.16.
Yeah, you're correct. Yes, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Who's at the floor? Go ahead, Councilor Kerr.
Just very quickly, everyone's going to have their own opinions on this, and that's fine. We've received, thinking about stuff, sometimes eliminating an option at the outset reduces the decision or makes it easier for everybody else. And I'll be honest, my instinct is not to sell it all. Like, I don't think that it should be sold in its entirety. So as an option, I don't think that should exist. Now I get into my moral conundrum of, do we hang on to it or do we cleave it into pieces and do that? One of the challenges, I mean, when you look at the survey, but then you sort of have to think about where things came from. My challenge is that personally going to the MCC, the parking available for the MCC is grossly inadequate, especially for a large number of events, and the on-road parking of people scrambling to try and get around the area and parking on side streets and everything else is definitely an issue. As you were eloquently going, Mr. Mayor, that there are probably a higher population living in there than what we originally planned relative to the number of vehicles that would be present with the allowance of basement apartments, et cetera, like a number of other things. Or the fact that a lot of people have more than one vehicle, and now what we notice with public works and everything else, trying to even do snow removal can become just a monstrous challenge with the number of vehicles. That being said, I don't think that we need to be putting in a parking lot for the MCC that is going to be utilized by individuals that live nearby. We have established a setup of paid parking in there in anticipation of what possibly was there. My concern with cleaving it into two pieces, retaining partial for parking lot, developing the other, is that the density there is going to just only increase, especially if it's a multi-level unit that let's say someone built an apartment building. The number of vehicles that are likely to be within proximity, yes, you provide within a dwelling for parking, that's written in terms of Planning Act and numbers, parking spaces per, et cetera, et cetera. However, we all know traveling anywhere into any city that there's a massive overflow in number of people that visit, et cetera, and suddenly parking spaces become even more prime real estate. So I guess that we'd be almost creating a double edge of sell it off, looking at tax money, but still creating even a greater parking problem than we seem to currently have. So that's why I'm having the conundrum of where do I fall on this? And I openly admit it. I have to listen to others for that. I'll admit, I lean more to hanging on to it. The notion of selling it to finance it, yes, our finances are better. Yes, I understand that there's an expense associated with this and a loss of revenue and a number of other things. However, the negative side of listening to people talk about a Class A facility with a Class D parking facility attached to it, the negative connotations of people saying like, yeah, it's there, but it's just a zoo. Like if you don't get there 3 hours early, don't think about trying to find a parking spot by the time you need it. And people circling around looking for parking spots when events are going on. That's my difficulty. I was very fortunate growing up when we went to events. We didn't have an arena in Pelham. I actually had to play hockey in Welland. But it was a giant parking lot at the Welland Arena, and there was never a problem, even when they had major events. And with the hospital across the road, actually, it became the parking lot for part of the hospital for people who didn't want to pay to park at the hospital. So it's a circular. That's my challenge. I need to listen to others. I'll be honest. I know which way I'm leaning, but then I'm open to, as I call it, the good, solid foundations, and eventually you have to give and take. That's where I am, Mr. Mayor. So I can't say what I fully support. I don't support selling it all.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Curry. Excuse me. Councilor Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, the comment you made about residents and easing their parking situations, my interpretation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my interpretation of that was if we create parking spaces within the MCC, that means that people attending the MCC aren't taking up parking spaces where these residents would normally park. Am I assuming that correctly?
That is part of the whole problem, for sure. But I was also saying that if we had more parking, then we wouldn't be afraid to lease even more spaces at night because we would have an abundance of.
Okay, thank you. I agree with Councillor Kerr. I am not in favor of selling all the property for development. I think the response from residences overwhelmingly is asking for more parking there. However, I'm not in favor of selling or keeping all the land for parking lot either. First of all, I'm looking at the cost that would be. And so that's one of the main things. And then I'm generally, even when I attended the meetings at the MCC and saw the boards up, that was excellent presentation done by our staff. I would be in favor of option 3, which is the hybrid. I believe that we're satisfying the need for more parking, but we're also getting, so it won't cost as much to build this parking lot. And the revenue we'd get from the sale, which is undetermined at this point, but also we would be getting the additional revenue in perpetuity from the tax base. So my preferred option would be option 3, the hybrid option. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eckert. This side, any comments?
So I'm waiting for the rest.
Okay. Shelley, you, Councillor Nesnick, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. So, yes, originally I was, when it first came to light, I was like all in favor of keeping 100% of it for parking. I too agree with Councillor Eckert. I'm not in favor of selling the entire parcel. But since then, I think we need to listen to our residents. The purpose of this was, there was a consultation done by our public, and it says that the results, where are they here? Let me get to them. Sorry. Yeah, it was 70% feel that they should be the lands should all be retained in completion, like completely retain the lands. However, I've been in and out of that MCC quite a bit lately, as well as when the art show was on. Even when the art show was on, and I think something else was happening that same weekend at the MCC, there were still parking spaces available. Are they far out in the corner? Yes, they were, but there were parking spaces. So I have never gone to that parking lot and not been able to find a parking space. And I've been there when it's not so busy, when it's been partially busy, when it's been very, very busy. And as I said, people who are a little impatient or don't want to walk quite as far are parking up on the grasses at the side, on the other side of the north of, is that Meridian Way or Wellspring Way? I'm not sure the name of the road, that north side, Meridian Way. And it's not because there's not a parking spot, it's because they don't want to walk that far, in my opinion. So, I don't think I'm in favor of keeping all the parking either, and I do think the residents who live in that area, they're aware of their parking limitations, and so they need to plan accordingly. There are garages for all of those homes, and I would hope that they're making use of those garages to park their vehicles, and I have sometimes seen that is not the case. So if you have a garage, use it for what its purpose is, and then you won't have as many parking issues going on. So I too am sort of leaning towards the hybrid model, because I think the revenue that we could gain from that corner would help, and I'm not sure that we need a total of, we don't need 100% of it, I don't think, at this point. I think if we were able to get another 70, 80 parking spaces, that would help when those bulging weekend, high attendance events occur. And the rest of the time, there's ample parking in that area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I also am in favor of the hybrid option. And I can tell you, one other option you have, where you always have parking, is if you take your bike. I've never had a problem when I bring my bike to work.
And in the middle of January.
But I can tell you, kids do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the biking option. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking at this, I don't believe that we have enough information to make a decision today about this. I think there are openings in the data we have because we haven't taken into account the parking that's in the medians that exist right now there. If they could be converted into parking, how many spaces would that be? And I know that Ms. Van Wavensway won't like this one, but the front spot where the original front door was to be in the MCC, we're short of handicap parking, and that's the ideal spot for handicap parking, right in the front there. Whether we use the whole thing or whether we use part of that, I think we should have the data on how many parking spots are available in those two spots. Having said that, the other thing I wanted to do, we've considered sale of the land as a possibility. Is it not also possible that we can trade that land for some other approved projects around? Because we do have alternate needs for our town here, land use needs for our town, and I'm thinking namely a fire hall, location for a fire hall. I don't know that that would fit with the definition of an ideal site, but perhaps it can be traded for an ideal site. So just thinking about that, I think that's the kind of data that I would be interested in collecting and seeing and considering, because I think that would be important to all we're doing here. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Councillor. Any other, back to Councillor, back Deputy Mayor Wink.
Okay, so I'm probably responsible for having this dilemma in front of us because 6 years ago, I made the motion to take that piece of land off the market. At that point in time, we had a serious deficiency of parking at the MCC. And we got complaints all the time. So since we put in the temporary parking, I haven't heard those same complaints. I don't think we can build a parking lot for 3 or 4 events for the entire year because of parking issues. I think we have to be kind of middle of the road, and that's why I'm leaning to the hybrid option. Additionally, that temporary parking area, people don't park in there, right? Because there are no parking lines, and I'm sure we could put in a lot more vehicles in that area if it was properly developed and properly lined. So essentially, we would be gaining parking spaces in there. Additionally, selling off some of the land, we're going to get, the value of the land that can be applied to repaving and developing that temporary parking lot into something more permanent. But then we're also going to get tax dollars from whatever is going to go in that piece of land. And those tax dollars, we've missed out on that opportunity over the last 6 years. But we need those taxes going forward. So I'm in favor of the hybrid, definitely, emphatically in favor of the hybrid, and selling off that smaller chunk, and let's move forward with this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Rightfully or wrongfully, I'm going to go to the Director of Recreation and Wellness. It's your building. You're there all the time. You're there when the hockey tournaments are on. You're there during the art show. You're there when the basketball tournaments all come together. So as Councillor Wink has alluded to, we've got the temporary situation there, which I forget how many parking spots are there. But so what are your, tell us your feelings on the parking situation at the MCC. And again, taking in the low parts, but also the ultra busy spots. Right? Give us an overall view, perhaps.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for this. I have to agree with Councillor Wink. Since it's been a long process and we've been dealing with parking issues for the past 5 years, but we've progressively improved the parking, and we need to always take that into consideration. So the new gravel parking lot that we were able to develop has been wonderful. The issue with that is people park everywhere and anywhere and not efficiently. Again, we need designated lines so that people park efficiently, and it would improve parking even more. That parking is very well used during weekends, special events, because we have multiple, as you know, multiple events, different events, which are bringing in different people all the time. I truly believe that and I don't even know if this is possible, but if we can improve the parking along Meridian Way in front of the the courtyard area, many people are parking diagonally, which seems to fit more cars. They're very, they find parking spaces. And it seems to be a safe way of parking. I wouldn't be in favor of touching the courtyard, only because that is green space in which we're planning on using it additionally as well. But thank you for the question, and I believe that with the parking that we do have now, with the additional gravel parking lot, it is probably enough.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting point. I don't think we've ever looked, and the road north of the MCC, that's Meridian Way.
Meridian Way.
You got to wonder that if we ever thought of making that a one-way street, so you could have angled parking, and you would have enough. If you made it one way, you could, gosh knows how many parking spots you could put across that building if we made that one way from the back of the MCC, obviously, to the four-way stop. I don't think we've ever looked at that, but it's an interesting concept.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's being well used on the weekends.
Yeah.
Already. What will be happening, as we all know, what we call the overflow parking at the back.
Yes.
Where the NRT is being parked now, that is not our land, and eventually we will be losing that to another development.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you for your input on that. Much appreciated. Any other comments from council? Council Nesmith.
So, yeah, thank you. So just one more follow-up with regards to the other options that have been brought up today. I think that it's comforting to know that this doesn't have to be the end of the development of parking at the MCC, and I don't think we have to do it all at once. So, as I said, as our town grows, if we move towards maybe if we choose today to go the hybrid method and direct staff to calculate or get a quote on the cost or the price of what the sale of those lands would be, and then the cost of finishing the parking lot or increasing the parking spot by 40 spaces. And then in 5 years, if we have to come back to the table again and look at maybe some alterations along the north side of the MCC building or on the north side of that street for some parallel parking or some angled parking, or even if we had to go into the court to add a couple handicap spaces, that's all something that's reassuring that we do have some further options as we move down the road. So those are all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So I take it, though, that we weren't going to make a decision, but we did want to knock off some options. Is that what we wanted to do, or is council ready to indeed endorse one subject, one option? I mean, Councillor Kerr?
I think we can come to a decision today, Mr. Mayor. I think.
Okay, even,
The group, because we have three
council be
options, you'll be proud. I think we're down to really,
Okay, even without knowing the cost?
well, what I noticed in here, though, under the financial considerations, and this is not an absolute binding us, it just says, developing part or all of the lands for the parking lot is not in the 10-year plan. It is recommended that staff report back on the financial implications of council's preferred option is part of the implementation strategy and next steps. So we have an opportunity at that point to review it and to say, are we going to proceed or not? Am I incorrect?
To the CAO?
It was certainly staff's aspiration to get, we hoped you were going to pick one of the three and that we would come back with concrete proposals for you within that category. So if I may be so bold, we've heard a lot of people talk about hybrid, so it seems to me that you're about to do something along that vein. No one has mentioned either to the positive or the negative the proposition or the idea of some sort of parquet land and whether that's of interest or not of it. So that would be useful just so that we target even more with or without as the case may be. But, you know, given 4 to 6, probably more like 6 weeks, we could come back with a fairly narrow range and you understanding what's selling more versus less, but within a reasonable range, if assuming that's where you're going. So that's enough direction for us to come back with much more specificity for you. And hopefully the capacity to make a decision one more. So we didn't think we'd get an exact final decision. We were hoping that at a minimum you'd knock off one option, but that ideally you were going to say one of the three conceptually is the right approach for us. Now come back to us with a better built-up vision.
Thank you for that, Mr. CAO. Back to you, Councillor Kerr. You still have the floor.
Well, thank you. No, that's more what my hope is. I mean, that helps me come to a better decision, having more concrete figures in front of me, and that's what you're alluding to, and I think that's great. I can follow through with that. Thank you.
And just while you have the mic, have the floor, you're thinking of the hybrid?
Yes, I'm leaning now more towards that because I can realistically, and listening to Councillor Wink and Hilbrand and everybody, I mean, everything they say makes sense to me, more so in recognizing. I still will always have a fear is we don't, once the property's sold, we don't control what really winds up on top of it and what its ultimate use may be and what vehicle implications may occur from it. But that's, again, we're not that good.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Wink.
So just to verify that, the recommendation of staff is that we receive this report, look at the options, and that council directs staff to proceed with an option and report back on an implementation strategy for that option, which would include the financial piece to it. So it's all there. So if we're comfortable with one of the options, I think someone's got to make a motion of what option it's going to be, and then we vote on that, and then vote on the entire recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you. Just before we get the motion, any comments before we have a motion brought forward? Okay, so then is anyone prepared? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Eckert.
No, I'm putting my hand in it. I'm prepared to make a motion.
Well, then go ahead, sir.
We do have a motion.
Oh, we do have a motion?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I see.
if
Oh,
I may,
yes.
Mr. Mayor, since we did have a motion with just the option missing from Councillor Niznik and Councillor Kerr, as the mover and seconder, they could put forward an option.
Oh, good.
Yep. Yeah, we just have to fill in the blank. Yeah.
Option 3? Is it option 3?
Who moved it?
Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Kerr.
Okay, so Councillor Nesnick, you have the choice.
And then I'll read what option it is.
Three.
So option 3, hybrid option, retain some of the land and sell some of the land.
Okay, thank you. Counsel, and you will second that? Okay, thank you, Counselor.
So now, any other
So the
discussion? for the vote?
discussion on this motion? I don't see any, so I'll call the vote on this motion. All those in favor? I see none opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now moving back to
Unfinished business.
unfinished or new business, and you indicated you had something you wanted to bring to council's
Just
attention.
with council's indulgence, just a further definition of timeline from Director of Public Works. We all, every time we stop at that Highway 20 and the railing is still there, and I know we're getting close to the deadline. I was wondering if indeed someone in Public Works could get in contact with the winning bid and perhaps send a note to council just as to a more definite timeline on that. I know it's going to be sometime in July or June, or at least that was the impression we were given. Just wondered if we could get nailed down a little more than that at present time. Is that a possibility to the director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the work has been tendered and awarded. I'll pass this over to Mr. Cook.
Ryan, you're on the hot seat. Now, don't delay. It'd be nice if we did. I know it's going to get done, but could you get a hold of the tender winner and ask if he can give us a more definitive time when it's done?
Yeah, through the mayor. I've been in contact with the vendor on another fencing project that I think will be undertaking shortly at Centennial Park. But yeah, they are just waiting for another section of fence to come in. There's a bit of delay on material still, but yeah, they are going to be trying to get this done in June.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. It's just, it's unbelievable that we actually let this go as far as we did, but it did. And we know it's coming, and that's relief in itself. Thank you for that. Excellent. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now moving to bylaws, presentation and consideration of bylaws. I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that the council for the town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, third time and pass the same, and that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw 36-2024 being a bylaw to remove the holding provision executed by bylaw 18/2023 for a portion of the lands located at 125 Port Robinson Road, legally described as part of Township Lot 167, Part 1, Plan 59R-5449, Town of Pelham, Regional Municipality of Niagara, file number AM-03-2024, and bylaw 37-2024 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of public event agreements with 3 licensed establishments in the town of Pelham and to repeal bylaw 35-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any comment, questions on these bylaws? Councilor Nesnick.
Yes, sorry. So just for my learning, and this might be through you, Mr. Mayor, just directed to Ms. LaRocque with regards to number 1, bylaw being a bylaw to remove the holding provision executed for the lands on 125 Port Robinson Road. Could you just explain what that in people language or simple language, what that means? Thank you.
And we go to...
Through you, Mr. Mayor. At the time that council approved the zoning bylaw amendment on these lands, there was a holding symbol put in place. And what that holding symbol does is it ensures that somebody can't come in and apply for a permit to use those lands as it's approved until that condition is met. The holding symbol on these lands related to servicing, and the condition was that the property owner would demonstrate that the property could be serviced to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. And at this time, we have received an application for site plan approval, and engineering plans have been reviewed by our Public Works Department and deemed to be satisfactory from the director, and so we've put this bylaw on the agenda, believing it's the appropriate time to have that holding symbol removed. There is still site plan approval required for this property prior to it being able to come in and have a building permit application.
Okay, and so does that come back to council, the site plan approval, or no?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, typically site plan approval is delegated to the Director of Community Planning and Development.
Okay, so then, I'm just double checking, is this the lands that were discussed at the planning meeting on April 10th? They wanted to intensify the lands from 70 single lots to 109 and...
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, this is a different property.
Okay.
This property came before council probably about 2 years ago.
Perfect.
And it's one portion of a larger property. It's solely the portion that fronts on Port Robinson Road, and the proposal is for a 5-story apartment building.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Senior Planner Ms. LaRocque. That's good, okay. Any other questions, comments on the bylaws? Councilor Eckert.
Just a question on number 2, bylaw 37/2024. So this is the licensed establishment, so I believe I'll be directing Sturton. So at the first part, I think it's section 4, I think it's 4. It says patrons can carry a single serving of liquor throughout the street festival licensed area. And then it talks about carrying them in and out of places. They can't do that. They can only do that in the places listed in Schedule A. So Schedule A is the 3 places that we're doing the license for. So if I'm interpreting this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, so if I go into the Cayman Kettle and I get a beer, I can walk around in the festival area, but I can't go into Beamer's Hardware.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, yes. Every premise that has a license and is covered by one of these public event agreements, you can walk in amongst them, but otherwise not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Eckert. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any, I will call the vote. All those in favor? See none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving now to notice of motion. We do have a notice of motion that you had deferred from a previous meeting, but it's now before council if you want to introduce that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Clerk. And I have been indeed practicing my reading all week, so I shall read it. Whereas there is a growing need for sustainable and environmentally friendly energy solutions, and whereas solar energy presents a viable avenue for reducing carbon emissions, alleviating energy costs, and generating revenue for the Meridian Community Center, thereby offsetting operating costs and advancing Council's green agenda. And whereas Council identified environmental and climate adaptation as a primary focus in the 2023-2027 Town of Pelham Strategic Plan, and whereas the prospective installation of solar panels aligns with the town's commitment to environmental and stewardship and sustainability initiatives, now therefore it be resolved that council hereby directs staff to investigate the feasibility and benefits of installing rooftop solar panels on the MCC and report back to council in Q3 of 2024, and that this investigation include the suitability of the MCC's rooftop to host solar panels, an analysis of installation costs and potential return on investment, the environmental benefits, as well as the exploration of available incentives and grants for renewable energy projects. And that staff further directed to share a draft of the report with the Utility Sustainability Working Group before its presentation to council. And if I may, I would like to speak to this motion. Thank you. And first of all, I'd like to thank Council Olson for seconding that. We had a unsolicited bid, producer, solar panel company contact the town, and we, I mean, with his contact, we have indeed already carried out an engineering study on the MCC's rooftop to see if it was indeed sturdy enough, strong enough to hold up the solar panels, and the roof was deemed by an engineering firm from Niagara Falls that it is indeed suitable for the solar panels of today, which are considerably lighter than they were 10 years ago. So that's a positive, that we can indeed do the project if council deems, after we read the staff report, that it is indeed the direction we want to go. So, yes, we know from Council Hildebrand and from other sources that there is a generating capacity problem in Ontario that's going to be getting worse in the foreseeable future. And there is indeed, before the Ontario government, and it may have even been passed because I got this information a month ago, that the Ontario government is thinking of promoting incentives to increase the building of solar panels, placing of solar panels on roofs. And so indeed, the staff report hopefully will bring back that there is indeed a government incentive program, grant program, that will offset the cost of this. So I think it's an initiative that this council should take a look at, and I'm hoping you will endorse it. And I will leave it at that, and I will move over to the seconder, Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This aligns very closely with our environmental aspirations that we have in the town, and it certainly fits in all respects to that. And the request really basically a business case is what we're looking for, and I assume that it would also include the sale of excess power that's generated by the panels. So I'm going to be, I'm pleased to second this, and I'll certainly vote for it. Looking
Thank
forward
you,
to the
Councillor.
report.
And now I will open it up for debate from council. Let's go to Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will be highly supporting it as well, but I'll also like to include, in addition to your motion, to include a parking lot canopy of the solar panels. Because I think if we're going to give a report on just rooftop, we're just taking a fraction of the solar availability, and that while we're getting a staff report, let's include a canopy of solar panels over the parking lot so we don't get wet when we drive, park there, or snow on our cars. And that's a very viable option in terms of economics. Thank you.
Excellent, and I will definitely consider that as a friendly amendment to the motion, and thank you for bringing it. Councillor Olson, you're fine? Excellent, thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor. Any other discussion on the motion as amended? Well, Councillor Kerr.
I think a critical component to this, and you've highlighted the positives, I'm really pleased that it's going to the Utility Sustainable Working Group for a draft for review. These people are on top of so many things. It's really nice to be able to make sure that they're in the loop as well, and it just suddenly doesn't appear to us that it's gone through them, and then it comes forward with some more information. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for those words. Councillor Eckert.
I may be premature in this question and probably wait for the report and it would answer all that, but there's certainly people, and one person in particular, that has far more expertise in this than I am. So I would kind of direct this question, and maybe Councillor Hildebrand can help me out. The rooftop panels or canopies in the parking lots, does that does that power get utilized by the MCC, or does it go into the grid and we get paid for it, or is it kind of a half and half?
Perhaps I do know, I have talked to the supplier of the solar panels. The solar panels that they installed now, we get first use of the hydro. So if the MCC can use that hydro, it goes to the MCC. If the MCC can't use it, then there's a automatic switch that will then divert to hydro. But if the MCC can use it, and the panels have been estimated that they'll be able to supply 30% of the power of the MCC. And as long as the MCC is a draw, then that solar power will go to the MCC. If it's not drawing, then it goes to the grid. Before, you used to sell everything to the grid.
Yeah.
But now there's a different way of doing that.
Okay.
Councilor Hildebrand, any further comments on that?
No, what we'd really like is to go back to the olden days when they pay us 90 cents
Yeah.
a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
and Sell it back to the grid and take the credit for our financial return and do it that way. But that doesn't happen these days. The best you can get is you can get a credit, in and out credit.
Okay, thank you very much, and I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Eckert. Councilor Nesnick.
Yes, so just, I just want to question and make sure that with this direction that it would be also the engineers that I'm not sure where you got the engineers from that said the roof was strong enough, but I would certainly want a second opinion on that to make sure that it is a sustainable option, and as well as, I'm sure there's more than one solar panel vendor in the world, so we would probably make sure that the business case goes out for tender on that as well to ensure that. So, yeah, I'm not sure, kind of feels like you kind of came in the back door with that in terms of the engineering report. So, but that's, I don't know the details there. So just make sure that we've got our own engineers to reinforce that that is indeed the case. Thank you.
Well, Councilor, if I may, I think that's kind of redundant. It's, this is an engineering firm from Niagara Falls. It wasn't somebody in the backyard. But if you want, it's a $2,500 that it took to complete that study. If it's council's wish that we go to another engineering firm, I certainly have no complaint about that, but it was a bona fide engineering firm that put their stamp on this project. Go ahead, Councilor.
Yes, well, that's fine, but I'm not sure who authorized that to be done, and like, this is the first I'm hearing about it, so it didn't come to council for approval for that to occur, so that's, I think, maybe where the problem came. I'm not sure who initiated it, where it came from, that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure that we do indeed have an official engineering report associated with the report that would come to us in the future.
Director of Public Works, I believe this engineering report came through your department. Comments, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I may ask on Mr. Cook to comment, but yes, this report, preliminary report that was done through an engineering firm, reputable engineering firm in Niagara. We have the capacity under a capital account that's authorized through us or through council to the engineering group to undertake small engineering assignments. That account was used to do this preliminary work. As part of a future project and expansion, definitely there will be additional engineering work that'll be required. That'll be part of at this point in time, I don't even know, but I'm assuming it'd be part of an RFP submission by suppliers who would undertake the engineering work themselves under their own submission for their type of equipment. That could vary, I guess, depending on what the manufacturer and supplier is. So at that time, I'm seeing this as probably more of an RFP after the feasibility study comes back to say, yes, this is doable, and these are what the business case, this is what the business case looks like. I see that coming back to council, and then approval to move forward with kind of an RFP and a project moving forward, which would involve additional engineering studies depending on the type of product that's being used.
Okay, thank you to the Director of Public Works. Any comments from the CAO at this point, or?
Just that later this week, the town's new environmental coordinator will be beginning, And I guarantee you, this is a welcome to Pelham file. She will be dividing her time between community planning and building and public works. And this is a lovely opportunity to get to know people throughout our corporation. It'll require her to go to RCW. It'll require her to work with the engineers. It will require her to probably require her to work with planners. There's a finance piece, so it's just a great, exciting project that fits exactly in, and Thursday will be her first day, so kind of exciting timing. And all the rest of it will get wrapped up, I'm sure, inside the alternate staff report. So, yes, good. Life is all about timing.
She may very well want to inspect the roof itself. Any other comments on the motion, Councillor Kerr?
Yeah, I kind of support what was brought out, and the director did a good job of explaining that any company that's going to install it's going to want to make sure that their engineers are happy with what's there, and they'll rely, what you got was a preliminary report, and that's all it was ever intended to be. It's kind of like, can I build a house at this site? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can, but now once you go to the point of building, somebody else is going to say, well, this we got to make sure we need to do A, B, C, and D to make sure it all fits and works. So I can support the motion as is.
Okay, thank you.
With Councillor Hildebrand's addition.
Any other comments before I call the vote? Not seeing any. All those in favor of the motion? I see none opposed. Motion passes. Thank you, Council. Mr. Clerk.
What do we think about breaking for lunch? Because we're now just down to closed session.
Yeah, want to break for one?
We do a half hour?
Yeah. Okay, Council, unless there's an objection, we'll take a half hour for a lunch break and then resume with the closed session. Very good, thank you.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you. And I turn to you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking at the time, I think it might be appropriate if we pass the motion at this point to extend our curfew to 1:30 under our procedural bylaws. So I would need a
We need a motion. Councillor Nesnick and Councillor Olson will second.
The next discussion and
Oh,
vote.
I'm sorry. Discussion, no discussion. All those in favor? And none opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving now to agenda item 19. We have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following: personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, labor relations or employee negotiations, one item, and it's concerning an advisory committee appointment. Proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land by the municipality or a local board. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. There's one item and it concerns Ward 1. To you for discussion and vote.
Any discussion on this item? Not seeing any. All those in favor? See none opposed. We are going in camera.
Thank you. Okay, we will be streaming in a second, folks, so.
Okay.
And your conversations may be picked up on stream. I know Sarah gets it streaming faster than I do, I know. Mr. Mayor, we are back in open session. We are streaming. So, since we've met our curfew, I would be seeking a resolution to suspend the rules of the procedural bylaw to extend the meeting of council beyond the 1:30 PM time limit.
So I'll go to this side. Councillor Kerr, Councillor Wink, or Deputy Mayor Wink, you'll second? Oh,
I'm good to extend it, but I will be leaving in 15 minutes.
okay, thank you. Do you need a timeline?
No, just to extend beyond the 1:30, and as long as we maintain quorum, it doesn't matter who moves it or seconds the motion.
Okay.
Just as you're aware, because it's a procedural suspension, we do need 2/3 majority to pass this
Okay.
motion, which would be 5 out of 7 members.
Okay. So without any discussion, is there all those in favor of suspending procedural bylaw? And we do indeed have 2/3. We have unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So then, sorry for some of the repetition. I just need a motion now to resume our closed session meeting based on the previous resolution.
Motion forwarded by Councillor Desnick, seconded by Councillor Olson.
And vote on that, Mr. Mayor. We just need to vote on that, and then we can resume our closed session. We just need to vote on the close.
Oh,
To go back
all
into
those in
close.
favor going close, sorry. And the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, I got my son coming over tonight and my grandson afterwards. We said we helps me.
Oh, we're good to go? Mr. Mayor, we are once again streaming and back in open session.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I believe you have a motion.
I do, thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that council will reconvene the regular meeting and the chief administrative officer is hereby authorized to undertake the directions as provided in the in-camera meeting of today, May 29th, 2024.
Thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing any. Call the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Wink and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved the council appoint the following individual to the Committee of Adjustment, Sue Sarko, and that the council direct the town clerk to prepare and present the necessary appointment bylaw at the following regular meeting of council.
Thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Deputy Mayor Wink. Be it resolved that the following bylaw now be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being bylaw number 382024 to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council for the town of Pelham at its regular meeting held the 29th day of May 2024.
Thank you. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for June 19, 2024 at 9 a.m.
Thank you. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.